I'd like to call the Claymont Board of Education's meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Cottrell,
Here.
Mrs. Grandison,
Here.
Mrs. Host here, Mr. Miles is absent, and Mrs. Wolf here.
Could everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation.
We'll do accommodations. Mr. Renz?
Yes, I'd like to recognize Mr. Scott Eldridge from our SST, and he has a presentation regarding our elementary and middle school PBIS. And while he's making his way, just when any presentation tonight, we're trying to improve the sound quality. So if you would come to the microphone stand, you may have to lift that because I think it would move down for the kids to speak. So.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to come here today. My name is Scott Eldridge. I am the consultant with State Support Team 12 that supports Claymont schools. I also have a focus on PBIS. So PBIS, for those that aren't aware, is Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. It's been around for a long time. 1996 was the first time that they started actually looking at data that there was a problem with a excessive amount of suspensions and expulsions, which then led to a higher degree of dropouts. Kids can't learn if they're not in school. So this was a nationwide problem. They got some researchers from several universities, Missouri, Connecticut, Oregon, and they started looking at the problem. And what they saw was, from the data, from the research, they said, punishment isn't working. If it worked, our kids would all behave from day one with the threat of punishment. So where's the disconnect? And the disconnect was students were coming to school not really knowing how to behave in school. They knew how to behave at home. They knew how to behave in different settings, but they didn't necessarily know how to behave in school. So these researchers came up with a framework. Positive behaviors, it started out positive behavior supports. They threw the interventions in later just so that they could make the acronym longer, because that's what they do. So it then became PBIS. It's a 3-tier system in which in most cases, when we say 80% of students, and this is all based on the academic model. When you teach a lesson, 80% of the kids in your class are going to get that lesson. They're going to understand it from the first time. Then you're going to have that small group, 10, 15%, that need a little bit extra help. They can be in a small group and get a little bit extra support. Those are the tier 2 supports. Then you have the individual kids who just need a little bit more individual attention. That's probably about 5% of your students. So that's your tier 3. So they set up this whole 3-tier system. In 2013, Ohio passed a law saying that schools were going to start implementing PBIS. They had looked at the data, they looked at all the research, and they said, this works. So they started instituting this framework, but not everybody was doing it the same way. And so in Ohio, we have a Ohio PBIS network that has representatives from state support teams across the state. There are 16 regions in the state, and we have representatives from each. And they said, okay, we need to recognize those schools that are doing this right, that are doing it above and beyond. So it's been going on for about 10 years. But it's not easy to get. Okay, so in Region 12, we have 43 districts. We have a couple hundred school buildings. We have 6 awards this year. 2 of them are in Claymont City Schools. And that is a testament to the leadership in this district. The first one, So the tier one, which is implementing PBIS to everybody. The tier one is a bronze award. And the bronze award winner is Claymont Elementary School with leadership by Richard Page and his lead PBIS team leader, Kristen Metzger. And I like to give Richard.
I had a great team last year and we're implementing it now because we're going to get the second award this year coming. We've already made up our mind, but my team was wonderful. Thank you.
So the next award, I have to say, because Michelle Henry knows probably more about PBIS than most of the people in the state, including people that are like training other people in it. Claymont Middle School, under her leadership with her team, and she has a tremendous team, not only implemented tier one and actually got an award last year for a bronze award for tier one. This year, she applied for a silver award, which is a little bit tougher to get. And so I'm here to give Michelle her certificate. When I tell you it's not easy to get, okay, the binder that Mr. Wrench has, that's the evidence that Richard gave. Okay. Double that, and it was like hard to carry the evidence that Michelle gave. So moving forward, what I can tell you is this, and I talked to Mr. Wrench about it earlier today. There are 3 awards. So we have bronze, silver, and then if you are implementing the tier 3 supports with Fidelity, then you can get a gold. The middle school, I have a feeling, is going to be putting in for that gold. I know that Richard wants that silver. The good news is there are at least 2 other buildings within the district that are that close to getting awards. With that, the 4th award that Ohio PBIS Network gives is a district award. And we have never in Region 12 had a district award winner. We're getting that next year, and I'm very confident that's going to happen. I know that the other buildings and the PBIS leadership team for the district has been working to make sure that happens in all the buildings, and I think they deserve a round of applause for that. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. We'll go into the administrative board committee reports. We'll start with the World Diabetes, and Ally, you want to bring up your group?
Good evening.
Yep.
You can move it.
You can move it up, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good evening. We are Claymont School Nurses. I'm Mrs. Bowe and this is Mrs. Cameron. And we have some students with us who want to tell us about type 1 juvenile diabetes, as World Diabetes Day was on November 14th. These students have worked very hard on this presentation and we are very proud of them. Personally, I can say that I have been here for 3 of these students since the very beginning of their journey. So it is truly amazing to see how far they have come.
We are absolutely honored to work with these kids day in and day out, and it is amazing to see the things that they can do. We would also like to recognize their supporters in the back here, their family and friends. And additionally, we want to recognize the teachers, principals, paraprofessionals, secretaries, cafeteria staff and support staff that help them, just accomplish each and every one of their days here at school safely. Tonight, we're all wearing blue in honor of diabetes. And on World Diabetes Day, the district wore blue, and we also took up a monetary collection and made a donation to the American Diabetes Association. So to start off is Jackson McGee.
Hi, my name is Jackson McGee and I am 10 years old. I am a fifth grader at Claymont Intermediate. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in first grade. This year has been an exciting one for me. I got an insulin pump. I've been working hard on counting carbs at school and at home. And now that is all the math I need to do to give myself insulin to stay healthy outside of school. I love to play sports. Football is my favorite sport by far. I also enjoy being outside with my brothers, sisters, dogs, and family, exploring the woods and hunting. When I grow up, I want to work for NASA and be an astronomer. I love to learn about the stars and planets. I hope as I get older, I can bring more awareness to type 1 diabetes in hopes of someday finding a cure. Thank you.
This is Kendall Reynolds.
Hi, my name is Kendall Reynolds and I am 9 years old. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 18 months old. I am a third grader at Claymont Intermediate. Miss Mechamonico is my teacher this year. Miss Grua was my teacher last year. Nurse Courtney and Nurse Allie are my nurses. Last year on World Diabetes Day, I started a project with my teachers and nurses so I could show my friends instead of telling them about my diabetes. When I turned down a snack in class because of my blood sugar, I put a pom-pom in this container. This year on World Diabetes Day, I had 120 pom-poms in my container. Those were just the snacks that I turned down at school.
All the snacks she turned down. Can we drop it?
Hi, my name is Ashton Mundell, and I am not a cyborg. I'm just a type 1 diabetic. I've been diabetic for half of my life, aka 8 years. My device is not a phone, it's Dexcom. My Dexcom reads my blood sugar levels every 5 minutes. My diabetes did not come from eating sugar. I inherited it from my mom, who has had diabetes for about 30 years now. Some days are harder to handle than others. Highs and lows are difficult to manage. My least favorite feeling is when it's 4 a.m. and I'm woken up by my Dexcom screaming at me because my blood sugar is low. It's frustrating when you have to eat more even though you're so full you feel like you're about to puke. Or the feeling of when your head is pounding because your blood sugar is so high that it won't read. My life is full of insulin shots and weird looks from others who don't understand. Living with diabetes is hard, but it's necessary to survive. Even though I have diabetes, I'm not that different from others my age. I have plans for my future, just like other kids do. I want to go to Marietta College after high school and get my bachelor's in music education. I want to become a high school choir teacher to spread the love of music to kids like me. Maybe different, but I'm still a human.
We had one more presenter, but she couldn't make it tonight, but she said that I could read her speech because she worked very hard on it. Hi, my name is Ava Fawcett and I'm 15 years old. I am a sophomore at Claymont High School. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 12 after what we initially thought was a case of the stomach flu. I spent 3 days in the ICU at Akron Children's. Although living with type 1 for 3 years doesn't seem very long, this has quickly become my new norm. I am a varsity cheerleader, a member of the pep club, and I play club volleyball. I worked at Yerkesville Water Park this past summer and plan to return next summer as a lifeguard. I don't let diabetes define who I am or what I can do. Two of the biggest misconceptions that I hate is one, that people think I have diabetes because I ate too much sugar, and two, people tend to assume that type 1 and type 2 are the same. Type 1 is when your pancreas quits working, whereas individuals with type 2 still have a functioning pancreas. Thankfully, with today's technology, my diabetes is much easier to control. I wear 2 devices, a Dexcom, which is a continuous glucose monitor that notifies me and my parents if my blood sugar is too low or too high. I also wear an Omnipod, which is my insulin pump. My pump releases insulin into my body every hour, in addition to the insulin that I must administer prior to eating snacks or meals. In closing, I wish there was more education to make others aware of the challenges of living with diabetes. I do consider myself extremely lucky to be surrounded by such a great support system, including my family, my school nurses, my teachers, my coaches, teammates, and friends that have all been amazing during this impactful and altering transition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all of you for presenting.
You guys did a wonderful job. So you should be very, very proud of yourself. You live with that every day. And thanks for educating us on the disease of diabetes. And good luck. And keep saying no to those snacks. I want to go back up to accommodations real quick. I wanted to thank, I'm wearing 2 hats tonight. I want to thank Justin Jones, the RAD, for orchestrating a hand food drive for the food pantry at the Claymont Minerva girls basketball game. I want to shout out to the Minerva fans and the Claymont fans. It was really something to sit there Friday and watch our kids come in with a canned good item for the pantry. So I want to say thank you for Justin for doing that. We collected quite a few cans, and I was real proud of our Claymont students coming in, and Minerva had a large amount of fans coming in. So thank you to everybody involved in that. We want to go into administrative. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I got a couple from, I saw Mrs. O'Connor's email. Congratulations goes out to one of our own, Tony Johnson. She got the Star of Excellence Award through the Tuscarawas County Board of DD, and read your email on that. How was the presentation and stuff at the school? Okay. And then another thing, and I'm super excited that we got 3 of our own Claymont students going to, well, I believe they're there at New York City. Dawson Cox, Alex Douglas, and Naomi Holman representing our district in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So that's super cool. They'll get to be on TV and get to see 3 of our own there. So.
Any other accommodations? Okay, we'll go into administrative reports. We'll start with Michelle with the Buckeye report.
Sure.
How about that? Sorry about that. Put you on the spot first.
No, you're fine. Good evening. This November Buckeye update, just a few things. OSBA conference, 3 of our members attended as well. Claymont sophomore students attended BCC for a visit on 11/15. Future programs we're looking at adding at BCC is dental assisting and fire training programs. It's currently for the adult education, but they're looking at adding those for our high school students. Our renewal levy passed. Good news to continue to provide our students with great education and job training. Thanks for all who voted for that. Our safety committee continues to discuss on how best to protect our students and staff. We will have a meeting again on in December, and gonna have come to a decision at that point. The next thing with weighted funds is, this was the neatest thing, obviously, because I'm a nurse as well, but we got an anatomage table. So it's basically human cadavers. Actually, like 2 prisoners donated their bodies into that. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I wish I had it when I was in nursing school. So just to have our kids be able to get hands on that for nursing, dental hygiene, cosmetology, exercise science. They also even have animals loaded into it. So for the vet tech program, I know that they're the only like high school adult ed that has it around here. I think that Altman has one. But boy, what an up and coming thing. I mean, totally awesome. Mr. Grove gave us a tutorial on that up there. So it was really cool. He of course put me on the spot. I'm sure he enjoyed that. Making me do some bowel testings and everything, signing them, but he can put tests in there and test the kids on it, and they can actually like just individually go up and assign what the parts are. I mean, just to look at a real part instead of in a book, it's totally amazing. We also purchased a construction tool trailer, so they can haul that to different areas. Mr. Alsep had wanted to branch out to like houses in Philly and stuff like that, to maybe doing updating instead of, you know, always building a new house. They're going to talk about maybe doing updating for our construction and bricklayers and all those good things. Also, so just in closing, I just wanted to update that I would like to ask the board to grant me my request to extend the seat of representation for another 3-year term at BCC. My current term expires in December, and my 3 years were not a typical one conducted throughout the heart of the pandemic. I feel the time on BCC that I brought forth information, shared ideas, strategies to better our district. I have represented both Claymont and BCC well, and been a bridge for those students that we share. I've highlighted our students and many accomplishments they have achieved during their time at BCC and kept the board up to date. I have developed good professional relationships with the other board members and administrators. I'm currently sitting on the curriculum policy and newly appointed to the safety committee. So I just was asking the board if they would grant me to be able to extend my term at BCC. So I will see where that comes from. I just wanted to do a couple shout outs. The play was amazing at the school. Of course, my kids love that. So we went and watched the play. The kids did a great job. I wanted to say good job to Ashton, that was also here, but I didn't get a chance to. And also I wanted to give a shout out to all the cheerleading coaches. They did a great preview for the cheer. Kennedy Beckley was really led it, and all the coaches, and it was a great display of the talent that we have on our cheer squad. So just from a personal note, I got to visit both those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize for missing the play. That was fantastic. It was so funny. It was so realistic. I mean, you could put it right to what happened during COVID, and I could relate to the internet, being in the house all the time with the kids. So yeah, thank you. It was great. It was, and even how the pets react to everybody being home. You didn't realize that. We'll go ahead and go with the with Holly with the CEA report.
All right, I'm going to give you some more Mustang memories. All right, this one comes from Laura Peters, years in education 28, years at Claymont 28. And her memory was taking a group of students to the state competition for math counts and getting in an accident. And thankfully everybody was okay, but that's always a memorable experience if you're on a bus and so forth. We have Carrie Kunkel, years at Claymont 19. She said, Christmas, I thought this would be good for this time of year. Christmas is always my favorite time, seeing how teacher, staff, community, and county come together is always amazing and memorable. And the high school and the nurses do a great job with our Christmas programs. And this next one is from Andrew Zimmerman, years in education 7. And he said, out of the many, I will highlight the memories of starting the business program because we are changing lives. And every time a graduate stops in, emails or calls, he's so glad to help and be a part of their story. Kelly Cook put this in at the end of last year. years in education 23, years at Claymont 22. And her best memory was the joint safety day with Eastport, Trenton and Park. And I got to be a part of that day also. We enjoyed watching the excitement of the students watching the med flight land at Eastport and then take off from the field next to the playground at Eastport. So that was really cool that all of our elementary kids at that time got to see that. That was a good memory. This one is from Neil File, years at Claymont 7. And he wrote his memory, as developing and growing the GSA club, providing a place where students feel accepted and watching them grow as people and learners as a result. So those are a few Mustang memories for tonight.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there an OPSI report? Okay. Let's see here, Mr. Page, you submitted your report. Do you have anything more to say?
No, just that, we've been really working very hard on the standard-based rate card. It's coming together. We're seeing the light at the end of this month. So then both first and second, they're working on that.
Okay. Let's see here, Mrs. Khan.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
I think we covered it.
Jessica or and Kelly, do you have anything to add to your report you already gave?
No, not a lot. We're just looking forward to, we have our Christmas program preschool coming up in December, and we're all looking forward to heading to the pack for that. Preschool in December and awesome.
Elsie, do you have anything to add? No. Heather, nothing to add? Andrea, anything to add?
No, I just need to add, we did have someone from state come do our CDP audit the other week. We were.
Go up. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Richard set the tone. I'll pick on Richard.
Yeah.
Richard set.
Shame.
We're not
Broke
going
the
to
rules.
the Podium. So,
We had someone
Thank
from
you.
state come in the other week and do our CEP audit. We're currently, our 4 years was up. So we're currently only sitting at 36% and we're supposed to be at 40% to be eligible. So they did give us a grace year for this year. So unless if our numbers come up for next year, we will have to go back to the traditional free, reduced and paid method of lunches for the kids. Breakfast will still be free, but so I guess we'll have to kind of see where we go with all that. And if you guys have questions.
And Andrew, when do they reevaluate that? Or do they reevaluate at the beginning of the next year?
It's just a yearly thing. I mean, we had a 4-year cycle that we just kept going off of our base cycle year. And then once you're done with those 4, you have to reapply again, which is what we did for this year. And since we were below, they did give us that grace year, so we didn't have to change, halfway through the year. But I run like they're called direct certifications. I do that every month. So it's kind of based off of that, but the more kids we pick up, so it kind of goes off of enrollment and then divided by our number of students that get assistance,
so I was gonna put you on the spot, but I think you answered the question, so I just make sure I got it right. So it's for direct serve from like Job and Family Services, so families who are in need. So my question was going to be, it wouldn't make a difference if we did the free and reduced lunch forms. It's only based off of who is from Job and Family
it's the
Services.
SNAP and
need.
TAMP program
Okay.
through,
So they have to receive SNAP program.
SNAP or TAMP, they do both.
SNAP or what?
It's TANF or SNAP. It's a little different than the SNAP program, but they consider both of them for that.
So not the medical card.
No, it's just the food assistance. Yeah.
So I've been working with Andrea and Eric naturally with this, because when Andrea broke the news to us on that, and I got the report from her, is that if our numbers don't go to that 40%, it would be looking at free and reduced lunch forms for next year, and those students who can actually pay a fee for their lunch, they'll have to be paying for it, but we're looking at keeping breakfast still free, but it'll become to the free and reduced for the lunch.
And there is the option too. I mean, we can do it by school, but I don't know how that would go, through the community, but I mean, there are 3 schools that were above 40%, and then there were 2 that were below the 40. With the average, though, we were still sitting below the 40, and the state does allow you to do it building by building, but
When going back, when I was on the board the first time, the only school that qualified was Trenton, and we didn't do it because of the community. When
Yeah.
we did the reconfiguration and moved the kids around, that got the entire district eligible at that point in time, so
yeah,
it is it's a fine line.
it is,
for
yeah,
sure.
it is.
But I
So-
appreciate all you're doing to. help
Yeah,
us with that.
absolutely. And like I said, I'll keep, kind of running numbers and maybe we can see like after Christmas, maybe where we sit. I don't know if. But the guy that did our audit, Scott from ODE, he's very helpful, very resourceful. He said if we need anything, we can get a hold of him at any time to ask questions.
When is the date? When is like the final percent date? Like at the end of the school year? We
They
have to be
say
at that,
the
or-
end of August, the end of April, they usually use those numbers. Now this year, he kind of just did, I don't know why, they were super behind, so he just used our enrollment numbers now, but I had to use the DC from last year, so. Yeah. So. That's all, thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. And I'll add, in turn with the CEP, with the free breakfasts and lunches, we do get extra money through the economically disadvantaged, or it changed to the DPIA this year. And when I looked back to prior to receiving that before and to when we got it, we've received approximately about an extra $1 million a year through that economically disadvantaged. So if we lose that and have to go back to paying, we will also see a reduction in the money we get from the state. So.
Okay. Eric, do you have anything to add in grants and transfers? Okay.
I got a question for you. How much use are we getting out of our school van? Are we getting a lot, some?
Some, one of the things we came across was, our tennis, we're not great for tennis. Golf, depending on when it came to tournament time, because the golf clubs. And, I don't think we didn't know that, we wasn't. We had a little room in the back that would help more with golf. I mean, golf can use it for a little bit, but earlier in the year, they had a little bit of difficulty. The other thing I use it for is St. Mary's. When St. Mary's has school, we don't, for example, Monday, we have to pick up those St. Mary's kids. And it's only 8 of them. So it helps out as opposed to being the bus. But it has been helpful, really has.
You used it for summer school last year too.
Summer school,
Yeah.
yep. It's definitely helpful. I mean, it saves anytime we can use that van as opposed to taking a bus. It's really helpful.
Thank you.
Who am I missing?
Couple things to add, since we're talking transportation. I did get notice that we actually have a VIN number, for the truck that you approved last October. So we are to get it, so that we do have a number now. I'm happy about that. And, mid-December is what they're telling me. So just hopefully in time for the snow plowing and all that. So that to me is a big sigh of relief, because I was a little worried about, one of our worst trucks making it through the winter. That's that. And then I also just wanted to bring to your attention, I had it in the report, but in the agenda is for your approval of the elementary design. And that is the last building that we have to send approval to for diversified, so then they can go forward with the bids. So hopefully that is okay. So we can keep that project moving forward and looking at our timeline of doing construction for those this coming summer. And then, just to kind of piggyback on the news that Andrea shared, the correlation between free and reduced lunch numbers and E-rate. That is what E-rate is, our funding that we get for all of our telecommunications.
So that is based on percentages of free and reduced, put in all these formulas, and it basically comes out to a percentage that we get off of the list price. Right now, we are sitting at an 80% discount with E-rate. I guess the good news is, since they're going to honor it for this year, we do E-rate. I start that process now, and that lasts through the spring. And what we're doing is that's always ahead of time. So that is basically bidding and locking in rates for the following year. So we will see an 80% discount this next school year because of those locking in. And then after that, I guess it will depend on whether we lose some of that funding as well, because those are all just based on percents by sheer numbers. They don't really have a chart that gives you a hard and fast rule. So we may, the next tier would be 70% discount instead of 80. So anyway, share that news as well, just for you, Kim, just so.
Can we get it all next year, you said?
We'll be good for next year because I'm bidding it now for next school year. Their funding cycle starts July 1 to June, just like the fiscal cycle. So that will still be 80% discount on anything that we do. Which makes me kind of reconsider. We do have some what's called category 2 funding, and it's a 5-year cycle. They give you that money, that bucket of money upfront to be used for 5 years, and you kind of budget that as you want to. But if we possibly are going to lose percentage, I might want to put some of that stuff earlier versus later, so I can get 80% off instead of maybe 70% off. So that just kind of got me to thinking I might want to change some things around. So I'll have to maybe do an update next month on what I want to do with that. So just to make our money go a little bit further. So okay.
We appreciate that, Beth. Thank you. Okay, Jody.
I won't talk long, but as you see, we have more curriculum. So it was so important, I put it on here twice. Basically, I was working on this multiple times and didn't go back and reread, so I do apologize for that. But I assume Cindy and Lois, are you still the curriculum representatives? So December 14th, we're going to be meeting with the Social Studies Committee that you're approving tonight to start looking at a variety of the options that are here, and hopefully make a decision by April for next year to implement a new social studies or a current social studies program if we find that that's the best that we are looking at. Also, it's not on my report, but the white boxes over here are Orton Gillingham training kits. Heather has, I don't know if she agreed or not, but reluctantly, we are using her ARP IDEA money to help pay for the training of our grades 4 through 12 intervention specialists to do the Orton Gillingham training. As part of the dyslexia law, all of the 412 intervention specialists have to have a training for dyslexia, and that training that we offer or that we send our other teachers to has counted. And so we're using the grant to help pay for the special ed student or teachers to do that. So they are all scheduled and assigned, and will be done with their training by March. So that's it.
Thank you, Jody. Any other reports? So we move on to.
Well, I can go on to Grounds and Transportation Committee and just touch base a little bit about that one. So, I mean, I did say one of our buses that we purchased 4 through the bus transportation grant. One of them has been received and it's already in our fleet, and it's replaced bus 205. We are supposed to get the other ones estimated probably in February. So there'll be 3 more coming for that. My son, who happens to work at truck sales, but he's not in the bus driving or bus division, but he did say schools that didn't apply for that grant the first time probably won't get that grant again, or another time it comes available. So good thing we applied for it and we actually purchased, because we wouldn't be looking at another bus in the future through that grant. Something else is at Walmart on Sunday, I got some bad news. This morning, Mr. Henry got some bad news, but we have one of our drivers who is looking at quitting at the end of the calendar year. and moving out of our area. And so that hurts we don't have people. We do have one permanent sub, and after that, we're down to Mr. Henry as our sub. And last week, we had 3 people out at one time, last 2 weeks. So getting kids to and from school is going to get a little dicey here as far as not having people to drive. And I know last year we didn't have enough subs to cover, and we had to split routes and try to get kids to and from. In my previous district, we sent the route of a certain route. I'll say we just had 205. We took it off our fleet. So say 205 can't be covered, so then we brought somebody in, covered route 205, and then sent them home early because we didn't have anybody, we didn't have any subs in my previous district to be able to do that. So we had to use a current driver to be able to cover. But our committee, we sat down and we were talking, we have an aging bus driver group. And at some point they will be retiring, and we're just like any other school district across the nation. We are short on people. Just saying, we threw out some ideas that we may have to look at going with a split schedule, where the middle school, high school go in the morning, and then the elementary age, kindergarten through 5, go a little bit later in the morning, and then split the schedule, because that way you can have enough drivers to cover. We looked at that one. That's as far as double routing. Looking at expanding our zones. So our pickup zones, instead of a half a mile, might go to a mile. So some schools, I know New Philadelphia has already done that and implemented it. Or we do both of those, expand our pickup zone, and also, go double routing. It comes down to, we have it with substitute teaching and aides today, not enough people to cover for what we need. So that's something that we're going to have to take a deep look at in the future on how we're going to do that with that committee. Intermediate sidewalk, Beth and I met with the village. I think this is in your update, but Beth met again with Bridges Excavating, and I think there's a solution, but we haven't heard anything lately from Mayor DiDonato. But if you put like a swale in the street, and with like a French drain, that basically the street would have a dip through it, and all that water would catch in that swale and through that drain and go down to the drainage. The street department guy said that hillside on the intermediate needed an extra drain to begin with, because there's one clear at the top and there's one way at the bottom, but nothing in between. Then Bridges Excavating said, well, if you did that and attached it all together, then all that water would run right to that swale and do that. So we would not be looking at replacing any sidewalk there. But if we're going to spend money on cement, our steps at the intermediate are in dire need of replacement. I know I talked to Cindy last week. We were talking about our steps, whether we come up the side and that bottom step and the middle steps won't be used until we have money, and you just replace the top piece, because right now the doors, when you open them, get stuck because the cement has kind of kicked back into the building. So I think the footers on the sides are fine. It's the actual steps that need to be replaced, and they were skim coated 20 years ago, and now they're just deteriorating. So that's going to be an expense for us here in the future that we'll have to take a look at. And the building entrances, we talked about those, and for tonight. So that all those have come back, and on also the agenda is the bids for the intermediate roof, the academic piece, the large piece of the academic. And as you can see on your agenda, that was a healthy chunk of change. That did not cover the auditorium and the gymnasium piece, and that was an additional X amount of dollars. I think all around it was close to $1 million for those roofs to be, need to be a complete rip off and replaced. 2 weeks ago, when we had those 4 or 5 inches of rain, we found some spots that are bringing us in water from the roof. So it's, but we now need to lock in our price now, because if we wait much longer, their guys have so much work, they can't keep up with anything. So, and the last thing, this one's our track, and football stadium. We're looking at putting up some lights, some extra like security lights on our track and for the stadium piece, but I appreciate that, and the kids go in and they're playing pickup football on the stadium, because 3-4 years ago, I mean, even our high schoolers, they were running routes all summer, practicing their route running and things, but we've had people not following the rules as far as what they're supposed to do. It says no bicycles, it says no strollers, no food on the field, no Gatorade on the field, no animals. Unfortunately, people don't look at the signs and read the signs, where I know in the fall before our team could practice, we had to pick up dog feces and make sure it was clean, because people were not following the rules. We have that turnstile gate so people could use it. I don't know what our solution, I'm presenting a problem. I don't have a solution to it, because if we lock the turnstile gate, I don't have somebody to always open it and close it every day. And I've seen kids I've seen adults scale the fence so they can go out and play on the field. So that's something as far as discussion on our part, how we would handle this. Beth and I talked about another sign right as you hit the track. But I don't know, it's kind of disheartening when we have that. And tobacco. Yeah, so.
I think we have, with the new. Sorry, with, Justin Fellers took over, Jim Maxwell retired, and we switched those hours. He is there from 12 to 8, it's his shift. And we talked about possibly he locks that turnstile when he leaves. And then having somebody, a 6 a.m. person, I'm not sure who that would be yet, but I have somebody that would be their responsibility to do for them as they come in. The problem is from Friday night until Monday morning, and I don't have a solution for that. I don't really want to pay somebody to come in. I don't know. And I mean, I just put that out there because I know you'll probably get, whatever, if we do decide to lock that, you'll probably have some people that will complain about that. And then, but yet, we want to keep things nice as well. So I'm just really putting out there, if anybody's got any great ideas on what we do. Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that do use the stadium.
It's
I mean,
very nice.
it's nice. A lot of people walk. We had 2 adults with strollers pushing the kids around. And, it says right on there, not to be, no strollers. And I guess we're just constantly telling people, I mean, if we're there and something, I've been, I know Jim Maxwell was always, very protective of the stadium, really taking pride in wanting to keep that nice. And, he would go up to somebody and say, hey, you can't have that on the field. So we just have to continue to do that, I think. If we're seeing something, say something, kind of like our safety committee, if you see something, say something. But I don't know, right now, somebody could come in the middle of the night and we have it open, so something to think about.
Unfortunately, we've worked really hard to get a nice stadium, to have a small few that are going to ruin it for everybody. So I think we need to get it out there in the community, and it needs to be not only school personnel saying something,
that's a good
it needs
point.
to be
Even
a
the
community that
neighbors.
says something,
Yeah.
as community people, they need to say, hey, excuse me, the rules are, you need to, and we need to point it out. Because unfortunately, they're going to ruin it for everybody. And there's a lot of people, it makes a nice walking track for a lot of people. And I'm really sad to hear that people are abusing it already. And as for our bus driver situation, if anybody knows anybody that wants to drive bus, Eric will be glad to talk to. And this is going to be an ongoing problem. And the unfortunate thing is that it's going to be a situation where we'll have to address it, and it's going to probably look at double busing and it's nothing that our district's facing it, but so is a lot of other districts facing it. So we'll have to look at what everybody else doing. And Michelle, I'm sorry, I missed asking if you.
It's okay, I didn't have.
You didn't have anything to say, okay?
I, Brian,
And I'm sorry that I overlooked you. But thanks to, but you can pass me a little note in class. Don't forget this out either. You already did, okay. We'll go on to what treasurer's report.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and pull that, but I gave you draft calendars for next school year. The calendar committee will be meeting on Tuesday of next week. So I had surveyed the staff and what they would like to have and what we can fit within a window of time for school. But one of the couple things that when Jody and I sat down and worked on this was trying to come up with a 2-week Christmas break and a week of spring break. So here, those are two calendars. Calendar A would start us about a week earlier and it gets us out earlier than calendar B. Calendar B starts a little bit later and then it ends a little bit later. But they're very similar in, they're not going to be too much tweaking when you're looking at a big window with schooling. But one thing that changed with both of those draft calendars that we have are that we would not be in school on Wednesday this week with either one of these calendars if they were adopted for next year. So we would have a break Wednesday through Monday with one of these calendars, unless something changes through the calendar committees. So I just wanted to touch base. So you guys have the draft, so we'll get something approved for next year. And I know that I'll be getting usually an email from someone saying when spring break because they booked their vacation regarding that. So that's why I try to get that out to you now. So as far as there's a report as far as Esther, where's our money going? So what do we have? Where we spent and how we spent it? We have spent 1.8 million, as you can see from the slide, with our HVAC boilers, roofs, and doors. The personnel that we've spent the 168,000, and that's included our aides that we used last year as extra aides from the ESC, tutoring. We paid substitutes out of that for last year. We upped the substitute amount. Can you go back a tad? Curriculum and services, purchase services. We bought some our curriculum for the math and ELA, so that was almost $1 million in itself right there, as you can see what we're looking at through those. And then other supplies, 108,000. So we have at this point $3,077,000, $183, and as Kim has 29 cents. We've actually expenditures to date. So what are we looking at here for the future? Our capital outlay, we still have our HVAC. We have some things to look at. The roof, that the intermediate is one that we're taking a look at for tonight. Our gym doors at the middle school have been ordered. So when we've looked at our safety and how could we change our building designs and with what structure currently is within the building, adding the gym doors back that were taken off and removed, I'm not sure when, down at the gym entrance at the middle school. So that's where the main entrance when school hours for parents come to pick up their children will be. And also the masonry work. They have pulled out of the elementary on Trenton Avenue. And last week they were putting up the scaffolding for the intermediate. They are getting ready to start there. That work, if you look at the top of this building right now, you can see that the top of it is kind of leaning in, and it's about a 4-inch lean. And why is that? Well, the guys have said it's because your roof needs to be replaced because the roof will shrink, which will then pull on the masonry. And that's what's happening right now at the moment with the intermediate. And then we have some personnel. I was at a TBT today and we talked about tutoring in January. So that posting will be coming for tutoring after school substitutes and also taking a look at summer schools. Some purchase services, again, some novels and some math consumables. So that total was 3.4 million with a total from the first slide to second slide of 6.5. So then the next one, it comes down to what are we looking at for the ultimately for the future? The building entrances, as I talked about, the roof, personnel, curriculum, and that gives us 1.4. So we're looking at that point, how that money is pretty much gone with what we have here. There might be just a little bit left over, but depending upon pricing of things. Because it's, as you know, and inflation has killed a lot of things as far as work. Or if this cost has gone up exponentially, and that's what we're seeing right now. So that's why this money went very quickly with all the amount of work that we were able to accomplish. We also want to talk about trying to look at chillers, but I can't commit to chillers for buildings until we know where we're at with leftover dollars. So and I think that's the next to last slide. So I want to wish you guys happy Thanksgiving on that, but that's where the money is going. It's been outlaid and where it pretty cut and dry where we spent it.
With the intermediate next door here, is there any, with it being a historical, building site, is there any money out there that could help?
That I'm not aware. I mean, I could look at the national monument or the for local area and see what might be available. But I'm not sure on that. I'd have to look. I just yeah, once those get marked. I mean, I know that down here, the old restaurant that they, that which is now a salon, I think, it has that marquee on it too, but I'm not sure.
I know that when we was in the committee meeting, our problem is our buildings are aging drastically and in need of repairs. And our problem is that we have to keep them safe so that the entrances that we have to put in, and we've got to get those bids in, get those prices locked in if we can by the 1st of January. So unfortunately, I'm just going to put it out there early, but there may be things that we have to decide as a board and financially for the school that we can't do. And maybe, like you said, steps, chillers, air conditioning, unfortunately, it may be opening windows and getting rid of, not replacing all them steps all the way down the junior high or intermediate building. We're going to be faced with a lot of ugly decisions, but it'll have to be financial, and we have to do the safety of the kids for the entrances. That's one of the main things that we have to do for our staff and our students.
You guys, whoever was on the board when the torts were taken down because they were crumbling and not replaced because the expense was spent on children, not on the beauty of the building. The structure of the building, though, that's why where those walls are like pulling in is because of the roof. That has to be done. When bricks start falling off, we have to be able to look at that type of stuff. And I know on the gym side of this building, someday we'll need to take a look at replacing some of the masonry work there, just because of I know some of that is not in too good a shape.
Are the doors over at the intermediate, are those side doors, are they in working order now, or are we still working on those?
I have not heard anything more regarding that as far as any complaints that it wasn't shutting and not shutting.
Okay.
So I'm I don't want to assume, but I have to figure since I haven't heard any more
I
from
think that
that,
was,
that they are.
was that in the
working.
report they are working?
Yes.
Yes.
If not. The last one in May. I mean, and we have a note on there to make sure staff, please make sure that it's always closed and. I didn't check it. But yeah, so that was. It's that there. It's shutting partner. Okay. Yes. So I. think we're good.
Thank you.
But walk in quickly. Instead of finishing at the bottom.
Right.
You know, so.
Next. Or who's next?
Did you want to speak on either the
Five-year
finance,
forecast,
or, I
yeah.
mean,
So,
before I
yes.
go through my presentations or?
Well, it's always fun doing the 5-year forecast, right? Because then you listen to everything that's said here tonight and it's gonna change.
Oh, yeah.
So 5-year forecast is only good the day that you write it for the most part. And I think next year we're into a new funding by the state. When I was down at the OSBA conference, I did, it's probably the best one that I've been to as far as a session because they actually had legislators there and it was like Q&A. And there were a lot of people asking about the fair funding. And it's not going to be fully funded. It's like $3 billion, the guy said. So, but they are looking at putting a higher percent next year. So, because obviously we're talking about the state having a $6 billion surplus and then the state's in the same predicament that we are here in the school district and that we are in our personal lives, right? Everything costs more money. So you might have extra money, but it's going to get eaten up by inflation or the cost of goods or whatever else happens to come along. So we did talk about the 5-year forecast. It looks good for 2 years, which is what you want to see. Years 3 to 5 usually don't look good. And that's because there's total uncertainty in that. And again, it was good the day Kim and I went through it. And I heard all this stuff tonight and thought, oh boy,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
We'll be back at the drawing board again. So, but I appreciate your time putting that together and the time we spent reviewing it, Q&A on that.
Okay, yep, we'll start with the monthly one. Just to recap, the month of October. So revenues, fiscal year 23 total revenues are slightly higher than budgeted. I still went off of the old forecast until we approved the new one. I didn't use any of those numbers. So this is, so we're at almost 35%. Projection right now is 33%. And expenditures wise, we're slightly lower. We're sitting just under 31% with projection of 33, with about 88% of our expenditures going to salaries and benefits. Total revenues for the fiscal year then is about 7.6 million and total expenses at 6.7 million. We did have a deficit in October of almost $252,000, but we are still sitting at a surplus for the fiscal year of almost $920,000 with a true days cash of 134 days. Review of our ESSER activities for October. ESSER 2, we only had $2,150 of capital outlays for roof repairs at the middle school, but we have outstanding purchase orders of almost 135,000 with a balance of 112,000. That's all sitting in the capital outlays, waiting for the intermediate roof also. ESSER 3, almost $15,000 of supplies. We're still paying off the math and ELA curriculums. Outstanding purchase orders of 313,000 with the balance at about 2.9 million. And those are the categories we have within the CCP budgeted for. State and federal programs for the month got reimbursement of 208,743 for all of our grant fundings. And the final, there you go. The funding balances for the end of October is there with total fund balances at just over $9.2 million. Any questions on the monthly report? Okay, I'll just move right into the 5-year forecast then. Okay, main revenue drivers as always is real estate, our state funding through ODE and our public utilities. So key highlights are for our revenues for this forecast. Our real estate appraisals came in from, I got some numbers from our Larry Lindbergh from the county auditor's office. Our taxable value has gone up $37 million, which should result in about $748,000 more in property taxes that we'll collect in the calendar year of 2023. As Cindy had said, we're not completely funded through with the state funding formula. That vegetables up there. Yep, revenues. Okay, so this year we're working at the funded at 33.33%. With DeWine being elected back in to the governor's office, I'm confident that he's still going to push legislation to keep funding this program. But we are due for a new biannual budget that will be coming out in June that will set it for the fiscal years of 24 and 25. So I kind of went conservative on my forecast because you really don't know. But right now we're sitting at, we're state funded by 70.6% of our revenues. And that just kind of gives you an idea of on a bar graph of where we're at. Last year's revenues came in right above 21.6 million. In this fiscal year, projection at 22.3 million. Having issues.
Yeah. Share, that's not shared, that's why.
Okay. On the expense side of things, this year, as I had reported before, we have an extra payroll in this fiscal year, which gives us 27 pays instead of the normal 26. So we do have an increase in those salaries this year, and we only had one premium holiday from for our insurance benefits, and in the past several years we've had two, so that cost us more money in that category too. Purchase services is going to be slightly higher because we're moving that the substitute teacher. We just implemented the new substitute consortium thing that they're supposed to help us find new substitutes and help get us substitutes on a daily basis. So we're hoping to see an improvement on that. But that moves from wages to purchase services. So basically just swaps buckets. And our supplies and our equipment are slightly, the supplies are running a little bit more because of inflation. We are seeing cost higher this year than, of course, than years past. And equipment, I keep Beth at about 400,000. I give her a budget of 400,000, so she's got to try to stay within those means. So those are how our expenses play out with 22.1 is what I'm projection. So if you look at the days cash at the end for the fiscal years, this year at 123, and that has to do with that salaries, the extra pay. We go back up to 127, and then 3, 4, and 5, of course, like as Cindy said too, we see a decrease just because we really don't know how to project out that far. The cash and out salaries and benefits, that gives you an idea of the percentages that I projected for salaries and benefits compared to our revenues. And this is looking at a fiscal year of deficit or surplus spending with the break-even point there in the middle. So years 1 and 2, we're looking at a surplus, and then we start deficit spending in the years after. This would be our overall cash balances, beginning of fiscal year 23, sitting at 7.1 in the general fund, and taking into account the forecast, we'd end fiscal year 27 at about 5.4. But even though we're deficit spending those years, you know, we will still scrutinize our expenses and try to beat the projection. At least that's what it is. This just gives you an idea of some of our popular funds and where our balances were at the month end of October. Athletics sitting at just under 75,000. We do still have money in the classroom facilities of 137,000. Our permanent improvement at the end of October was at 656,000. Now I did just make the payment on the stadium project. So that is reduced down. I believe that payment was like about $237,000. And so our general fund was sitting at just over $8 million. Any questions on the forecast?
You mentioned our substitute service that we approved. How's it now that your email stated it was live? How's it working for us?
I emailed them today because I've been in conversation with some of the principals. It hasn't gotten us any new people as of this point in time. So as Richard was telling me today, that there was a floater sub that he needed for something, and it hadn't been picked up by anybody else. So I'd emailed to say, is it working properly for us? It didn't start out well, because we had people with two apps. So you could take jobs off of an app instead of logging onto a computer, and they had assigned them one. And so now that they didn't have duplicates, but we're still trying to steal people from other people, I think is what we're doing. So it's as far as the onboarding and the compliance piece, as far as the substitutes, that went well. But as far as just finding more people to sub, I was talking with Richard, had somebody today, and they were, if they had their high school diploma and they get it in, we can start using them. So that's helping, but that's another area where we just don't have a bunch of people.
Can you look at it? Can we see it, or if you guys look at it and see? I mean, like bus drivers. Can you see like where other districts? Like I know everyone's in need of bus drivers, but
everybody's in need of
look
teacher
at
subs too.
What's that? With
Everybody's
teachers?
in need with teachers too.
It was a
But
common theme at OSBA conference.
was it?
Yeah.
Drivers and
teachers.
subs. It's a common theme everywhere.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, what's what do they say down there? I mean, what's the is it pay, or is it, you know, the COVID era to nobody wants to work till, I mean.
Conferences, the sessions I was in, pay is part of it, right? Because in the private industry, we can pay more than what you can pay in the public industry. Not only is the substitute an area of concern, but the lack of high school kids going into education is an even bigger concern for them. And I start thinking about here at Claymont, and like my husband can retire in 8 years, and you can bet in 8 years on that day he's retiring. So there are a lot of people, you know, I know that's in our discussion here too. You start talking about strategic planning, you know, if we can't even get kids to want to go into education, I think it's going to become a bigger issue than what we're even realizing right now, but it is, every person I sat beside, I asked them, because I was just
It's the same,
curious, is it
every
us,
person.
you know? Yeah.
What are they predicting? We were talking about this, Brian. The amount of teachers retiring. The rate they're retiring and how many
There's
going into
they
education, you
say-
gave some
Yeah,
percentages.
they say about 5,000 are retiring and there's about 2,500 entering the profession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, I would say, we've done a phenomenal job with our Business Advisory Council as far as finding a pathway for kids to go to whether they're going to post-secondary or whether they're going to the workforce, and they went through Buckeye and that. But one of the last Business Advisory Councils I mentioned, I said, we have forgotten education because we want to push for engineers, we want to push for electrical, but there's no discussion on what are we doing for education. And I think they're rechanging the focus of that, because they say, yeah, because everybody that sits on that advisory council, and the ESC is a very large region, and they take Belmont to Cambridge, Guernsey, and they're up in our area, and they're all struggling with finding people. You used to be able to have an opening and have 20, 30 people apply for an opening, and now you get 5 to 10. Sometimes you might get 2. So, and then if you have something specific that you need a credential for, you may not be able to find somebody.
And at the one session I went to that had the legislators there, that was one thing they were talking about, is that they thought maybe, and I don't pretend to even know all the details of it, but right now, the areas that you can teach when you get credentialed is like smaller than it used to be. Like, I think Craig can go like first grade to, I think he goes all the way to high school, but now they're segmented and they're smaller. And so I know the legislators were talking about, we need to rethink that. Maybe we need to get back to something a little bit wider.
Change that now. It used to be a pre-K 3.
Yeah.
Now it's pre-K 5.
Right, now they're talking about, this is just what the legislators were saying, because of that, exactly what you said, right? We have 5,000 people retiring, we have 2,500 young adults coming out of college that want to be teachers, so we obviously aren't going to meet what the needs are for the state, so. And part of the feedback they've gotten has been the narrowness of these credentials that they have. I mean, and they're talking everything, like they're talking, what can we do to incentivize people to want to go into education, so I do feel like at the state level, they recognize that we do have a serious problem coming on our hands in the next 10 years, and it's going to progress. It's every year, I think it's probably going to get a little bit harder and more stringent and more difficult for districts overall. So, and that's in the education field. Now, Mr. Henry's field with transportation, I don't know how I just don't even know how, because, if you have a CDL and you can go drive for private industry, you're making $100,000. You're not making $100,000 in the school district. So that's the struggle that you and overall us as a district, have to figure out, the strategy that you guys are going for, which you named off 3 or 4 earlier today. So it's just really important for the community to understand that, this isn't just Claymont. This is the entire state, and if you read any news nationwide, it's everywhere. So
Yeah. The workforce is definitely dwindling.
yes.
I face it every day in home care. I
Yeah.
used to have 20 applications for one job, and now I'm searching for nurses and aides every day.
Yeah.
So it's tough. We vote to accept the report? No, it's in my. Okay, step right here. Go ahead, what?
Well,
Go ahead and guide me here.
I think we're through our reports, and I think of public participation. So in public participation, anybody who would like to speak, we're supposed to be placed on the agenda. I did not receive anybody who wanted to speak under public participation for this evening, so we can move on to any addendums and corrections. Unless the board members I've seen some things that need to be corrected before we look at approving. We can take a look at those, but I don't have any changes from the packets that you had been given.
Does anybody have any?
No, I make a motion to accept the board agenda.
I'll second it.
Roll call will do Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mr. Cottrell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Then we go into board discussions.
In an update, I talked about the strategic planning and trying to do some homework on strategic planning. I think it was one of our community meetings when we were talking about what we were going to do with our ESSER dollar. Someone said, "What's your plan? How are you looking? What's your long-term goal?" A couple of years ago, our board sat down and we went over the vision, mission, and created our core beliefs, but where it needed to be taking the next step and what we'd be looking at. I have contacted a couple different companies who would help us through this, but they would take a look at like, well, how would we want to address academics? What's our plan for our facilities? What's our plan for our maintenance? What's our plan for social emotional? You know, so how are we looking at diversity and inclusion with our students, and also fiscal responsibility. Kim and I sat through a Zoom today with a group. And most of these companies that are coming in, and one of them is the Ohio School Board Association, they would come in and they would meet with the board to start, how do we want to go through the process, get some information from the board, go to the administrative team, do a community survey, come back with some long overarching goals and objectives, and create the action plans. And so that would kind of bring it back to, from the surveys, what are areas of what we need to look at. So that's how we would be looking at those areas. Couple different company. I mean, there is an expense to that. The one that we found that is the least expensive at this point would be the Ohio School Board Association, and that is led by the people at the school board. And it's also past school board members who are also helping with strategic planning. They do have a survey that goes with that. Their total cost they would look at for strategic planning would be at $10,000. Everybody else's exceeds that amount of money. It would be looking at a 3 to 4 month period. If we started after the first of the year and finish up by the end, toward the end of the year, approve the strategic plan and get that out and begin to implement. Each one would have each company that we've talked to would have some in-person meetings, and also just do some things via, here's your survey, send it out through the Facebook. People respond back onto our website to respond to their thoughts about what they feel is what we should make our emphasis and our priorities. So that's the information that I've had so far. And I talked to the OSBA, the Impact Group, Shared Resources Center, and Partner Ed Consultants are 3 that I was able to take a look at. So I'll go there. Ohio School Board, Impact Group, Shared Resources Center, and Partner Ed Consultants. And I know the Impact Group is out of Hudson. The Shared Resource Center is out of Dayton. And the Partner Ed is out of state, and but they've done the work in Ohio, and obviously the Ohio School Board Group. So I just, if anybody wanted to comment on that, whether we want to continue to look at pursuing it and bringing it back up for discussion, mull that over and discuss it at next month's meeting.
I I think that it's something that we need to be thinking about and we need to be having conversations about because long-term wise, we do need to be looking ahead. Because hindsight's always 20/20. So I personally think that it's worth further discussion and pursuing it and seeing what we can come up with. Because we do have needs and we do need to figure out, what's the best avenue to be able to meet those needs as we move forward. And, the society that we have now, which is so uncertain, whether it's school funding, then, and you're balancing that with the needs of the students and getting kids to school and feeding kids. I mean, it's just, there's a lot to it. And I just think it's worth our time and effort to look at it, to look at a strategic plan. And most, I mean, Lois, you probably do. I know we do strategic planning all the time at my office. So I started 11 years ago, and the company, we were $7 million, we're doing $27 million this year. So that's not without strategic planning. It's not without looking ahead and figuring out, what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. So I think it's important to have a plan in place and to try to move forward as a district.
I agree. I have a strategic plan.
I'm comfortable with the Ohio School Board Association. Because they represent you guys also, and that, not only that, but they're least expensive. And they're also board members or past board members who have been through that process. They could do a presentation either in person or via Zoom, then at our next meeting to kind of discuss that with us and see where we are, and then we can make a decision at a later date for sure. But I can set something up for our December meeting to go a little grander detail. Okay. The next thing I had on was the human resource officer. Kim and I were approached by the East Central Ohio Educational Service Center regarding a resource officer, a human resource officer. And Dover had actually approached the ESC about the need for this within their offices, and they also had, Tusky Valley had also expressed this need for that. So then they asked if anybody else, and they basically they contacted you, didn't they, Kim, and to say,
Are you interested?
or would be interested. So Kim had met with them. So you want to go ahead and talk a little about it?
Yeah, it started out with Dover and Philly. Philly backed out, so then he was trying to come up with something that could be affordable for anybody that would be shared with them. So he had reached out to Katie at Dover and then Mark at Tusky Valley. He had also reached out to some Bridgeport, but then they backed out also. So it was left with the three of us, and if we would be interested in sharing this service, possibly 2 days a week with Dover, 2 days a week with us, and 1 day with Tusky Valley. And so I went to the meeting just to see, because there's times that we feel we miss things here, that if somebody was geared towards collecting all the paperwork for new hires and making sure all the insurance and stuff. So it was just right now was in the beginning stages of, is there interest to even look for somebody like this?
I have to answer no. I mean, right now, I think we're looking at the bigger picture than hiring an HR person here. I mean, even to share that responsibility with another school district. I mean, who does this now?
Well, before it was, we had Nicole and Bonnie were in the office, and I think Nicole at one point was part-time. And then when she moved with Bonnie's position wasn't filled. So it's kind of just
A little bit of everybody in the office is kind of, trying to do.
So
some of the stuff.
through staff reductions, kind of when Nicole was kind of doing some of that years ago, it's just been absorbed with everybody else.
So we don't really have an HR person.
I'm probably along the, and I think I've already told both of you guys this, I'm along that same line as Aaron. I feel like if the first step, if everything's kind of been spread out, is to do an analysis study within the departments to figure out who's doing what, and maybe somebody's doing more than, and somebody else needs to pick it up, you know, or look at that, the equity of the task that we have in the office. For one thing, Mrs. Miles' report last month where 100% of our kids went on to 4th grade, which is great. Only 60% of them were on level proficient for reading. So in my mind, I don't want to add overhead. I want to figure out how we make overhead work. And I want to put that money back into a help to try to get these kids that were not 60%, that maybe next year we're 70 or 80, or, you know, to get these kids proficient when they're moving up, because it's only going to hurt them the older they get. If you can't read, it impacts everything you do. And so that has me concerned as a board member. And I'm with Aaron. If you're asking me today, I'm saying that I think we need to assess what we already have. I would tell you my biggest concern in central office is that I don't know who knows Amy Stannard's job. And I know Amy's gonna be retiring in a year and a half, and that has me even more concerned. That we make sure that which I know we could outsource it to ESC or whatever, but I think that lends to the fact that we need to look at what everybody's doing and make sure that, you know, we do have some cross training or whatnot. Which is what we do in private, you know.
Right.
And we do.
I can attest to that one because
Yeah.
with learning the new system with redesign and stuff, Tracy has worked with Amy a lot more, and we actually had to do a special run the other day without Amy here, and Tracy was able to
Which is fantastic.
fulfill that. So yes, we're working towards that. So yes.
So maybe the skill set can be developed
Right.
within what we have, you know, and I mean, I know Tracy does AP and purchase orders and requisitions. There she probably has some room and time that she could maybe pick up some other stuff. So that would be where I would lend to, is that I would be like, I think we probably have to figure out how we work smarter and not harder. That's our entourage at our company, you know, it's everywhere. Within that, and again, I'm really concerned about the reading part of it, is and kids being on task.
Understandable.
And you know, so that's kind of where I would be as well.
What is the cost? I mean, the splitting?
This was in the total beginning stages. They were going to put together basically a job description and even just put it out there to see.
Okay, Kim, but how much is a good HR person? How much, we talked about this.
We talked about
this.
It's kind of good. I would say $60,000 total. So I would say between three it'd be about $20,000. That was my estimate, and that's kind of what.
Low.
And she said I was low. So, but what their plans are is for the ESC is to bring like a newly graduate, and then that they would work and mentor under Nanette McFadden at the ESC.
And I agree. I mean, I think we do need to have a discussion with personnel, with people retiring, and you know, what the plan is going forward. I mean, when I sat here before, you know, Bonnie Smith, she was a great asset to this school district, and she was going to retire, then she didn't retire, then she, you know, depending on, you know, the superintendent, and then she decided to stay. But in the meantime, we didn't use her to train anybody else. I mean, I saw.
Well, we brought the other lady but she was kind of fresh too. So we went through a year of training with that one, but it just wasn't quite there either. So, and then Patty is another one that I'm worried about because will be retiring probably.
When she gives me her definite, and we've talked. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, when she gives a definite, say, this is when I'm looking at, I'd like a year out to have someone go hand in hand. Right now, I'm not having to worry about that at the moment, but in
2 to 3 years, probably.
how many years it could be,
3, 4.
we would have to, and we need somebody starting in 1st of August, and working all the way through all those reporting periods. And EMIS is not, when I did EMIS years ago, it was 2 reporting periods and pretty simple. It's not that way anymore. And the last one I had on as far as discussion items was the arming staff, and as far as some of the questions that we had as far as insurance coverage. You know, we do have insurance coverage for our our staff. If someone happens to be injured, say for example, intruder comes in and our person takes them out or gets hurt, our insurance covers for that person. If someone actually gets hurt by the intruder, our insurance picks up that for that particular person. Bureau of Workman's Comp, the Bureau of Workman's Comp claims, they're an employee on staff, and if someone is injured, hurt, whether they are carrying a firearm or not carrying a firearm, our insurance picks up, and also it is a Bureau of Workman's Comp claim, irregardless of which way, because of the role that they fill. They're filling a role of an educator or classified person within our district. So those were some of the things that we had taken a look at as far as the concealments and things. Those have some questions on. You know, the firearm's always concealed on the person. It's not out, you know, and using it with everyone else and showing it and things. So that's not part of the program. The curriculum, at the end of the month, we should be able to, those districts who have passed a resolution at the end of November, the safety committee or the Ohio Safety Center will be up and running to have schools apply for who they use with their curriculum piece. So that's come along since Orpus was here last month. I talked to the safety center down at OSBA, and Mr. Murphy from Tusky Valley has updated us on that also. So that's coming along faster than what had been previously mentioned. So I continue board discussion on this item.
I'm still struggling with it. I think I told you last week, I can't, I don't know what it is that's pulling me, but I just struggle with. I just struggle with 24 hours of training for someone who went to school to be an educator, and now we want to put them in a situation where, you know, they potentially could, you know, have to shoot someone, and I know it's a volunteer, and I'm still struggling with it at this. I mean, I'm just being perfectly honest. I'm still struggling with wanting to do that.
Which I appreciate as far as, you know, that those sentiments. It's you know, as far as the amount of training that's set forth, I know people say, well, it was 700 hours. Well, that was from what
That was a peace officer.
The peace officer, the Supreme Court put that number out there. Prior to that, there was no set number. And I will say that the schools have gone through and implemented the program far exceeded the training amount that was set forth in this new legislation. So
now, I know that that's for us to decide, but when I think at the last board meeting too, we were talking about actually putting that safety council or the safety committee back together. And I know that I read it somewhere, I don't in here, of who it is. So is that a topic of conversation that the safety committee is going to have as well, to kind of get a feel for what their thinking is on it? Or are you thinking no? I'm just trying to.
When we met previously, because I was going through past agendas, we met previously and talked about it and how it was rolling out, and there was discussion. It's not, arming staff isn't for everybody.
Right.
So there are people, when we met the last time, that were saying, you know, I have no interest. But yeah, I'm not complaining that somebody's here that I know potentially does carrying the firearm, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, and I've had people reach out to me both ways, you know, that I think you should support it, and then I think you're good for not supporting it, and I'm like, you know, I appreciate everybody who's reached out, and contacted me in regards to it, but I think I even told you in Columbus, I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I'm just not there yet. I'm just being honest, so.
But the district safety committee that you're approving tonight, it does have a meeting set. To be next week.
Mhm.
We wanted to get a meeting in before Christmas. But in the past, we talked about it. We didn't go into details regarding it, you know, the program, because it is confidential in that aspect of things, but
Right, I don't mean like
Just-
who's on it, I
yeah.
just meant overall.
just overall as far as, you know, how things would play, because some things we talked about last time that we had a meeting to this time, we would be discussing, the triage, and then we should be talking triage irregardless. If there's an intruder, who's going to be putting on tourniquets and that piece of it. So that was a discussion then, and this is, it will continue to be a discussion.
Right.
And so. Yeah, you're advised in it, but as far as, you know, it doesn't say, I don't have an interest, or I do.
Yeah.
And if they do, they'll talk to me privately.
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking of from that perspective, just a more general conversation perspective from it, so. Yeah,
It probably, my answers to what I have is probably what you get. You got some people saying yes and some
Yeah.
people saying no.
Yeah.
So
It's a voluntary,
yeah.
you know, it's voluntary. And here's my opinion on it. I'm not a gun person. I'm not a gun person. But the people that are willing to come up and conceal and carry already conceal and carry probably anyway. I mean, not on the school property, but they're probably in the community or conceal and carry. Obviously, somebody like me is not going to conceal and carry or take the classes. But I'm married to a family that guns have always been a part of their life, but I would hope if my grandchildren are in a classroom, I would hope that the teacher that was teaching them that day was concealing and carrying if there was an intruder. So my theory is that I hope we're never faced with that. But if we have people that are willing to conceal and carry, it could be a matter of, wouldn't it have been nice if somebody would have been down in Texas, was a conceal and carry, and when that guy came in, they were able to, you know, because like the sheriff said, we're not going to get there. Lives are going to be taken before we can get there. And they were calling 911 after people were already, you know, and so my feeling is nobody's going to volunteer that somebody that has an experience like me, nobody with inexperience is going to say, oh, I'm going to carry. So the people that I think that are going to step forward are going to be the people that already understand conceal and carry. And I know that I'm faced with that in home care. And so, and I know who my people are in my agency, and they'd be who I want beside me or beside my grandkids. So I support it because I never thought I'd be doing, you know, be talking about this, but in a school setting, but here we are, and it could happen in our small town. I don't want it to, but if somebody can protect somebody, even if it's just, you know, 2 or 3 kids, it's worth it. If it makes a difference. And I think that, you know, a teacher has nothing to protect themselves with, and it would be nice to know that even if the intruder was in, you know, my room, I would hope that whoever was the conceal and carry guy or girl was coming down the hall to my rescue. And I think that as other teachers, they may feel the same way, that I'm hoping somebody in this building has a weapon other than the eraser or a pencil, you know. And I think if you interviewed the people that have already been put in that situation, if we went down to Texas where they had the shooting, if they would say, would you approve conceal and carry? I would say it would be 100%. In it, because they've been faced with it. And so that's my belief on it. And like I said, I truly believe people that are going to raise their hand and volunteer are going to be people that already are, they're used to guns anyway. It's not going to be somebody just, you know, this ain't Old Town Saloon Day swinging from the hip, you know, it's going to be somebody that knows what they're doing with their gun. So
I guess I have a question. What's the expectation of the teacher with the gun? Is it to chase, is it to go after the person that's doing the shooting?
First expectation is make sure your kids are safe. So having them safe and they're where they need to be, and that would be, yes, it was the training that Orvis talked about whenever he was here, as far as different scenarios and how do you react in those scenarios. And you need your number one goal would be to take out the intruder so that no one else would be getting hurt. So yes, but keeping your kids safe would be number one. And then how do you react as far as under an intruder situation?
And I'm just gonna give the Texas situation. The police wouldn't go into there, correct? To go after the shooter, am I correct in Texas?
I don't know enough on that. I mean,
Because they didn't even have enough knowledge.
for me to speak something on that, I mean, I think that Sheriff Campbell talked about it a little bit. I don't know that he and I spoke and said that, you know, that he ranted on Facebook a little bit because they didn't react the way they were supposed to react. So I can't say one way or the other any more than that. But it's.
So I guess my issue is with a teacher that has even less training. And the police officers didn't want to go in there. Do you see what I'm saying? To chase down someone.
And I don't know why they didn't choose to go in. I mean, I can't answer that.
Right.
You know, so whether that was their, for whatever reason, they waited.
But we're not asking somebody to do something they don't or don't feel comfortable doing. I don't feel comfortable chasing somebody down, but here's the thing. I know what I would do, and I think I said this to you guys in safety in the committee meeting. I would probably go after the gunman with whatever I had, whether it be, you know, a ball bat or whatever, because that's just that's the type of person I would be. But I sure would be much more comfortable with Johnny behind me had a gun. But you know, and I think that's the thought process, but I don't think anybody is going to, just like the teachers that stood up and took the bullets for students to protect, you're going to do whatever you can. That's just your mentality to protect your kids. And it would be a lot better if you were protecting them and you had a weapon. And I really don't think anybody's going to raise their hand that's like me, that's inexperienced with a gun. You know, I just don't really think any person that would come forward that say they want to conceal and carry isn't somebody that's already heard of shooting or whatever.
And the professional development committee has been meeting as far as the Alice training is on the docket for next year. So refreshers into that. So if you are in a situation where an intruder comes in a classroom, you barricaded your door, they get in there somehow, and then you pick up your books, your erasers, your pencils, and then you try to take that person down. So that is still a tactic that can be done.
Right.
But
you use everything you can.
yes, so that still will be implemented next year as far as refresher trainings again for the staff. So there is a schedule for that. But you're correct as far as whatever tool that you have. So if my tool would be a firearm or my tool would be a book, I would do what I needed to do to try to take the intruder down and not hurt any kids.
If you guys think you were teachers, it's not just teachers, but all other staff.
It's staff employees, yeah, or yeah, it could be classified or certified.
And that's what I was gonna ask too. We just had a orientation on Cleveland Clinic, on run high flight that Homeland Security is backing instead of Alice training. Have you thought about going that route instead of Alice?
What I plan on doing is working with Orvis Campbell. Because he is sending his training officers to Texas. I believe it's Texas to get the up to latest training. So we're going to be looking at him presenting, or his group presenting at our Alice refreshers.
After our just,
Michelle, what did you say that training was?
Oh, run high flight.
What is it?
It's like what?
Run, was it called?
Run high flight.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And he mentioned using they call it alert. And alerts the company, and he said they're like the top notch on, like an Alice type of presentation people. Yeah.
after our meeting or discussion, did you send an email out to staff regarding who would be interested in the safety committee? Is that the 20 later in the agenda, the 20 people, is that 20 people that replied to you? Or
Pretty much as far as I had sent an email in my update to the staff, and then I asked the principals also to be able to have some people. So those are the people who were interested in stepping up and serving on the committee.
on the committee? I mean, I understand Army staff is only one part of safety, but I mean, when you got meeting with this group?
The first meeting, December 1st,
Okay.
3:30.
Won't you, I'd like for you to speak with them. I mean, they sit in the school setting every day and come back to us, in December.
I can get their opinion on it.
And feel what they,
Yeah.
what the 20 of them feel like. I mean, they're the ones that do the job every day. I mean, and see where they feel.
I didn't look here. Was some of those teachers, some are teachers and.
Oh,
folks here.
mixed, yeah.
Okay. that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah.
We have a mixed breed on that too.
Okay.
All right. Move on.
Is there any,
I don't have anything else as far as discussion.
is there any items? There's nothing to be pulled or?
Any items we need to pull?
No.
Treasure.
Okay, after presenting the month and the 5-year forecast, we'll move to recommendations. Need a first and a second to approve the financial report for October, the payment of bills that were presented, the minutes to the regular board meeting of October 18th. There was 2 stragglers of student activity budgets I had in your packets to approve, and the 5-year forecast and the notes as was presented.
I make a motion to approve the treasurer's items.
Awesome. Thank you. Roll call, Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mr. Cottrell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you.
So then we'll go to Brian, your recommendations.
We'll go through and I'll try to explain or give a little bit on each one of these. Approve the office design for Claymont Elementary, and as I presented that, I have one question on those. We're taking the existing one classroom where a copier is right now. So we're going to divide that basically into 4 sections: secretary, principal, clinic, and also guidance. And then we're going to have it in the design. There will be a walkway. Then the conference room will be right there within that complex. Basically where Mrs. Tarbert is right now and the nurse, that'll become a conference room area. And then we won't be doing anything different with those restrooms and where Richard's office is and the storage behind it. So that is that's the most expensive project we have because of the routing of the heat and making sure that because we're having those offices. So I don't know if anybody had any questions on that design. We laid that one out, tried to incorporate all those with it. Hearing none, I'll go on. Approve the bid for $458,000 to Senimark Corporation for the Claymont Intermediate Roof Replacement, and that'll be paid through ESSER 3 funds. So you had that presentation from them, and we're looking at only doing one part of that. approve the transportation agreement with REM Transportation Incorporated for $19.49 per trip, or $38.98 per day. That'll be effective. We're going to go back on August 31st to June 1st. We have a student who returned to our area and is attending school at a local school and needed transportation to and from to that. And then the item D is the hourly rate for classified substitutes. The federal or state minimum wage is going up to $10.10. So we would increasing the hourly rate for the substitutes and also our substitute bus drivers sit time. We currently pay $15 and something an hour for drivers to drive the subbing. And then there's a sit time while they're at an event. And
Right now it's $10.
it was $10. Now it's going to minimum wage. Accept the resignation, Julie Galloway. She resigned the 21st of October. We have some employment for under 90-day probationary period with a 1-year limited contract that's incorporated into that. And we have Sarah Gettle at the intermediate, Amy Jo Crago at the intermediate, Shelley Lever will be at Starlight. Ray Ann Randalls will be at the high school as ISS. And we have some committee meetings or committee groups. We have a social studies curriculum group. We have a professional development group that we've also approved some others with that, and our safety. Approve up to 5 extended days paid through the ARP homeless round 2 for Brandy Fox as our homeless liaison, and that'll be at her per diem rate. So she's up to 5 days. As I said in my updates, I think that Brandy does a lot of things like after school hours or on some weekends. And actually, whenever sometimes even when summer is in session, helping families who have become homeless. And we do have that homeless money available through ARP this year for this. Accept the resignation of Bruce Johnson as girls basketball coach. And then we'll come back and do some hiring. Bruce Johnson and Caitlin Edwards as co-assistants. So they'll split the stipend.
Is that what, I was gonna ask on that, is that, he didn't want to do it completely, or he can, or?
He was there Friday night, so is Caitlin, but they agreed to split the stipend. So I had to have a resignation to split. And then Ryan Tarbert and Rachel Miles are gonna split the junior high, 7th grade. We have some volunteers for athletics, Jim Beam for middle school girls, Eric Harding for wrestling, and Brady Milburn for boys basketball. We have some clock operators. I want to highlight that for minimum wage, but highlight the fact is that Jim Crothers will be entering his 50th year as a clock scoreboard keeper. So I want to congratulate Jim for that. And then as the other list of people that are also there as far as ticket takers and scoreboards. We had some expenses for our district semifinal volleyball game, and that's reimbursed through the District 4 Association. And the total that we're asking for them to reimburse, but we pay out is $700 for those workers to host that event. I have a non-athletic supplemental job description for digital media manager. And we have like employee for digital media manager, Jacob Baldwin for that as item O. And then we non-renew the fall athletic supplementals. So we have volleyball, football, cross country, track or cross country, tennis and weightlifting, and then golf. And then the last item we have is Q to approve the overnight trip for the varsity cheer competition team to Universal Studios, and that'll be March 17th to the 20th. And that is no cost to the district. That's all privately fundraised.
Yeah, make a motion, we accept the superintendent's recommendations.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Cottrell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Grandison.
Yes. Okay, is there any old or new business?
The old business we talked about in board discussion, so I don't have anything with there. I would say that the OSBA conference was very good. So I don't have the dates for next year, but we may need to think about putting in for vacations next year to attend that conference. So.
Does the high school, or do we still do the Christmas play that? Or Christmas program, I guess,
Yes.
do we have family? Is the teacher still doing skits and stuff like they don't do that? Why don't we do that anymore? Just asking. I mean, I was just curious. It was always,
We used to bring the families and the children into the school, and I didn't think it was appropriate to bring everybody in publicly. We keep it pretty private. We go just deliver the things to their homes. We have a lot going on. You have a hallway decorating contest between grade levels, food collection contest going on. Early learning teams are involved, so trying to plan maybe. We have several food drives that are toy drives that are going on at all the athletic events. So it's just kind of shifted over the years, and instead of assembly into just more of a kind of a 3-week long all school initiative, I guess, to serve the family.
Hey, I wanted to ask, the kids were saying you have a tree that you pull, a tag tree, okay. Is it possible, if somebody in the community would want to do that, that we can let them know that you have?
Sure, we don't have it up yet, so the trees are up, but the tags aren't done. We
Right,
just
that's
got
all right.
ready with all the kids and everything today, so. Yes, what we intend to do is put the actual things that are needed. on the
Needed,
back of the
okay.
tag, so people know.
Because I've had a couple people in the
exactly.
community ask me if there was a way
Yeah.
there, and I said, they can come in and maybe pull a tag or
Yeah,
whatever,
absolutely.
or call the school and maybe they can.
And then we're trying to plan a community event, but we don't really have it all worked out.
That's all right.
So we'd like to do something in town where people can kind of come by
Can buy and
and
drop.
drop things off, or, get some hot chocolate, and just a community event. So I think people don't always know everything that the kids and staff of the district do. And we kind of like to get maybe the community seeing some of the stuff
Well,
we're doing.
it was nice when my kids were in school, they brought the families in, but it takes a little bit of, it takes away if your family and you're an older student and your family, younger siblings were getting gifts, because then it singled you out. So I do appreciate that they don't display that anymore. I think that I helped with the Yorksville Eagles delivered food baskets this week, and I said to them when I called, give me addresses, please don't give me names. And it's just, it just for dignity and respect in the community and working at the, yeah. So, and then I'm afraid too that you won't have families come forward that are in need, that may came forward, so. But whenever you have that ready, if you post that on the thing, then we'll make sure I'll pass it around to how you're doing that.
We're really trying hard to get it done before the break, because Black Friday.
Black
shopping.
Friday. I think Black Friday shopping started month of November.
Now, and along that, we will have a Facebook post from, I think it's the Job and Family Services. They'll have 180 coats and gloves to give away December 5th. Then that'll be, I don't remember the actual date, but we'll try to get that word out, but it's
For just our district?
It's
for
up
the
in
whole
Philly, so it'll be the full county, so I don't know, those will probably go pretty quickly, ultimately.
And we still have some food or clothing pantries in our school.
Yes.
Okay.
And this week, the staff is, they donated $5 to wear jeans, but also they're bringing in hygiene items. For each building was supposed to bring certain items in, And our nurses that had here tonight, they spearheaded that. So they'll take care of all that and get that delivered where it goes to. But it's for us, we say that no parent pats their kid on the butt and says, be bad at school today. Get in trouble, you go get them, and a lot of families, and I appreciate, not singling out those families because a lot of people, they know that they don't have money, but not drawing attention to the fact that they don't have money. So that's important for us to keep their integrity in place. So.
Okay. Hey, do you want me to make a motion to adjourn? Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
8:06. Next meeting is December 6th.
Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks.